There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
And the President outlined his vision of a new world order.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
I think a new world order is emerging.
We needed a new world order.
New world order.
A new world order.
And we have a new world order.
A new world order.
You are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage. Born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Today's pharmaceutical industry was pioneered by families like the Rockefellers, DuPont and Mellon, alongside corporations such as Bayer, Sanofi, Wacker Chemie and Dow, who in 1925 and throughout the Second World War were better known as Anti-fascist Farben Industries, or IG Farben, and Standard Oil. The evidence strongly documented shows that IG Farben and the Rockefellers cartel financed Hitler's Third Reich. Without them, the Second World War could not have taken place, for they provided much of the Nazi war machine. And it was IG Farben, today's pharmaceutical industry, that commissioned the building of Auschwitz and began the eugenics dream of the final solution with the Nazi Holocaust, which recent studies suggest may have been a much higher figure than 6 million, and more like 15 to 20 million victims. Not only do we find families like the Rockefellers, Rothschilds and DuPonts, who not long before were referred to as robber barons, helping finance the war on both sides, as they had done during the First World War, but so too was Britain, whose financial support not only helped IG Farben and Standard Oil produce synthetic rubber, known as Buna, for the Nazis, but the Bank of England, through which the Bank of International Settlements was being channeled, financed Hitler to move towards war. Montague Norman, head of the Bank of England at that time, gave money stolen from Czechoslovakia by the City of London to enable the Third Reich to march on the Sudetenland in order to help bring the will to war, stating that we must lend Germany 90 million Deutschmark. It may never be repaid, but it will be less of a loss than the fall of Nazism. The Rockefellers, who like the corporations that came together to create IG Farben, had already chalked up medical atrocities prior to the eager involvement with the Nazis, which continued long after the war. This powerful corporate family that fronts for the unseen plutocrats have been influenced in the direction of our lives for more than a century through secret societies and numerous think tanks, such as the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Bilderberg Group, heavily influenced by the Rockefellers. Established in 1954 by Nazi SS officer Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who led the proceedings as chairman. This is the very same Nazi SS officer who founded the World Wildlife Fund in 1961 with his close friend Philip Mountbatten, the Duke of Edinburgh and late husband to the Queen of England. In 1968, the Morgenthau Group founded the Club of Rome at a Rockefeller property, and was led from its inception by lifetime Rockefeller employee and UN statesman Maurice Strong. Known as the grandfather of climate change, or as the New York Times referred to him in 1975, the custodian of the planet, Strong would not only ghostwrite An Inconvenient Truth for former US Vice President Al Gore, a fellow Club of Rome member, said to be the first man-made climate change billionaire, but Strong would also go on to co-author Agenda 21 for a New World Order. At the World Wilderness Conference in 1987, that preceded the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio, both of which were attended by the likes of David Rockefeller, Edmund de Rothschild, Maurice Strong, the IMF and the World Bank, as well as a number of other powerful corporations and industrialists, who would go on to make profitable investments in the man-made global warming industry. This manufactured environmental movement created by Nazi industrialists, referred to as the Fourth Reich at the World Wilderness Conference, reveals much of the intent of the authors of man-made climate change and their motivation. As Edmund de Rothschild told businessmen and women gathered,
"Ladies and gentlemen, every country has its own problems, its indigenous peoples and its wildlife.
To quote Matthew Ehret from his article of 2019, the agenda for a post-industrial society driven by a green infrastructure revolution was laid out in the July 24, 1980 Global 2000 report that called for energy conservation, population control and environmentalism as the foundation for the new economy. Later that year, the World Wildlife Fund's Global Conservation Strategy is published, paralleling the Global 2000 thesis. The WWF was headed by Prince Philip and Prince Bernhard during this time, and its vice president during Carter's administration included Louis Bloomfield, whose Perm-Index Bureau was caught coordinating JFK's assassination, and Trilateral Commission member Maurice Strong, who called for destruction of industrial civilization in a 1990 interview. Childbearing should be a punishable crime against society, unless the parents hold a government licence, proposed David Brower, founder of both Friends of the Earth and the First Island Institute. It doesn't matter what is true, it only matters what people believe is true, said Greenpeace co-founder Paul Watson. And Dr. Rauni Kild, former Chief Medical Officer of Northern Finland, told us that in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit conference it was made clear they believed that 85% of the human population has to be eliminated. However, renowned environmental consultant and former climatology professor at Winnipeg University in Manitoba, Canada, tells us that CO2 is not a pollutant. It is the trace atmospheric gas that makes life on Earth possible. Carbon is solid, and carbon-based fuels are solid, coal, liquid, oil, and gaseous, natural gas. Calling CO2 by its proper name would help the public remember that it is actually an invisible odourless gas essential to plant photosynthesis. The global warming scam makes billions, possibly even trillions a year for the environmentalist industry, with the public disciples confusing political science with physical science. CO2 is not the cause of heat, but an effect of it. We produce CO2 when we breathe. But of course the mass-murdering, child-raping elite want us to believe that the common man is the enemy of the earth, rather than their destructive corporations. Added to this absurdity is the call for you to watch your carbon footprint in a universe in which everything is made of carbon. The authors of the man-made climate change even admitted the hoax themselves in 1990 in saying, "The common enemy of humanity is man." In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human interventions. And it is only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. The real threat then is humanity itself. Geoengineering and weather manipulation is not a theory, but openly admitted to by our governments, with China openly boasting of firing 1,110 rockets to seed the clouds in order that the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing be precipitation free. And the British government stated on the body's official website that cloud seeding may be a factor in conflict situations or a reason to precipitate conflict. Do you really think that it is mere coincidence that the ones who tell us the future of the world is threatened by overpopulation are the very same people who are cutting down our forests, decimating the Earth's wildlife, and polluting what they have not already stolen of our water supply? Among them, the families and corporations that were implicit in the manufacturing of the safest pandemic in history, recording far less deaths in 2 years than the annual flu. At least, that is before we start to see the fatalities caused by vaccination. Poisons financed and manufactured with the assistance of families and corporations that had previously been key financiers of the Third Reich and heavily involved in the Holocaust, from which today's pharmaceutical industry blossomed. The more one continues with their own in-depth, non-biased research, the more they discover the sinister side of the eugenicists that inspired and financed despotic regimes of the past. As has already been shown, the Nazis were not defeated. They did not disappear, but re-established themselves with the help of the Vatican, America, France and Britain.
That's right, we got AIDS out there. You think they're gonna cure AIDS? No. They can't even cure athlete's foot. Because ain't no money in the cure. The money's in the medicine. That's how you get paid.
2010, the deep state had the Rockefeller Foundation script a plan to introduce martial law and a permanent method for total control of the citizenry. In this plan that they disguised as an academic scenario, as they called it, the method they would use to gain complete prison-like control of the entire population was to infect them with a devastating biological pandemic, and then, under the guise of protecting us from this threat, they would be free to implement their final solution, a prison state. The prison state that they need to keep their grip on power. As usual, the fascists disguise their crimes as helping us, and as is typical of this new type of fascism, they always make the claim that we the people are begging them to have more and more control over us. As you watch this video, remember that the deep state concocted this scheme in 2010 as a quote-unquote simulation of what is to come. The following is proof that the deep state is behind these viral pandemics. Absolutely positively, pandemics are now the tool of choice for the fascists, known as the deep state, and the private contractors that they contract these pandemics out to. For the deep state, to make an international pandemic isn't even a high-tech operation, it's a no-tech operation. It's easy. A simple vial of Ebola, SARS, MERS, Spanish flu, or coronavirus, or whatever they come up with in their secret bioweapons lab, is all they need to bring the world into their total control. The only thing you have to remember is if they can do it, they will do it, which means they already have done it.
The ruling establishment has a lot of, they will stop at nothing to complete their toolkit of control, right? So one of the things that has been missing from the toolkit of total control has been quarantines and curfews, right? Mm-hmm. So now, welcome to the new world. Here's a document from the Rockefeller Foundation. Rockefeller Foundation right there. You can zoom in on that, where my finger is. It's called Scenarios for the Future International Development, the Rockefeller Foundation. This is something like a 50, 60-page document. I'd like you to go to page 18, if you can look at this up on the internet, but I'll read it off to you. It's called Everything Was in Lockstep. Well, in 2010, they published this, Rockefeller Foundation, and here's what they're saying. A world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Okay, I'll read a little bit of it. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years, nobody was anticipating a pandemic, finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese, they use some scenario, but this is Ebola they're talking about. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. You can see the agenda. Just naked, raw, naked control agenda written down, and it's anybody's guess how this becomes effectuated in real life. So whether this is written specifically as marching orders or whether people take it upon themselves in the intelligence networks to say, okay, well, this has been produced, so this is the plan here. But these narratives have to be written in advance because the intelligence agencies don't know how to do these narratives. They need help. So these think tanks, they come up with these like Rand Corporation, Rockefeller Foundation. These are think tanks of death. They're not the think tanks, they're not there to find great ways to help people. Right? Okay, the pandemic also had a deadly effect on economics. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt. which is what they want. They want a completely isolated world, right? Debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Well, of course they want tourism stopped because they're not in the tourism business, and they want you at home in your house in front of the TV. Then they got you, because once you watch the TV, they own your soul. Even locally.
Wait a second, we're on television.
I mean commercial television, let's say. National. Even locally, normally bustling shops and offices sat empty for months. Okay, so I love how they talk about it in the past tense in 2010. Right? The pandemic blanketed the planet, though disproportionate numbers in Africa died. Southeast Asia and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire.
It sounds like the opening monologue of a disaster movie.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Matt. Mom? No, go up to your room, honey.
So we have a virus with no treatment protocol and no vaccine at this time.
You had a seizure this morning, Beth.
Does she have a history of seizures?
No.
Allergies?
As of last night, there were 32 cases.
Is there any way someone could weaponize the bird flu? Is that what we're looking at?
Someone doesn't have to weaponize the bird flu. The birds are doing that.
And here's the good stuff now. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. Now here's this one. I love this one. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging, in quotation marks, strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency. So they should have been tougher, right? Accelerating the spread of the virus, not just within the United States, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better. China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of virus far earlier than in other countries. So the message is here is we have to look towards the Chinese, the oppressive totalitarian. Chinese regime as an example of what we need to be doing here. And of course, the ruling class here loves the Chinese regime because they have demonstrated to the ruling class the most efficient form of capitalism, which is authoritarian capitalism. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their muscles, flexed their authority, and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like
that's what's happening right now.
But soon it's going to be like body.
It'll be at the subway.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying? We'll be going through this in the sub to get on buses and the subway, things like that.
And what this means though is don't think about having a cigarette, a joint on you, or basically you can't. This is a dragnet for everything. So if in order for you
in other words,
even supermarkets, they want body checks at supermarkets. Okay, so basically what they're saying is they're building a system where every move you make, you got to go through them.
You can't get food.
Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck. And even intensified.
Didn't that happen already with 9/11?
Of course.
9/11 was how many? 14 years ago, and we still have all these draconian rules.
So they're going to put the body cavity
USA
searches
Patriot and all
that stuff. So in order to get to a supermarket, you got to have a body cavity search. And then when there's no more Ebola, well, you know what? We kind of like this way because we have an complete infrastructure of a control grid. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and national terrorism to environmental crisis and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Well, what the hell would rising poverty have anything to do with imposing strict citizen controls with face masks? So they're very sloppy stuff here. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance. and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Two more documents. Keep it zoomed. We have the National Security Memorandum of December 10th, 1974. This is Henry Kissinger's brainchild. The National Security Memorandum number 200. You can look that up on your internet. I'll summarize it. He says that there's too many people, we got to get rid of the population. So to answer your question.
Oh, from earlier.
Yeah, he says, he used the word depopulation, which is different. Depopulation means killing people that already exist, and it's to get the minerals, because we need the minerals. And here's another one. The CDC has a patent on Ebola. They patented it. Yeah? Right. So basically, if you want to get a cure for your Ebola, you've got to go.
It says it right up here, right? It says human Ebola virus species and compositions and methods thereof, and it's a patent.
It's a patent. They patented the main strain plus something like 17 other strains of it. So they own it.
March 2003, panic grips Hong Kong as a deadly new virus sweeps through the city.
In 2003, the Center for Disease Control saw the possibility of a gold strike, and that was the coronavirus outbreak that happened in Asia. They saw that a virus they knew could be easily manipulated was something that was very valuable, and in 2003 they sought to patent it. And they made sure that they controlled the proprietary rights to the disease, to the virus, and to its detection, and all of the measurement of it. We know that Anthony Fauci, that Ralph Baric, that the Center for Disease Control, and the laundry list of people who wanted to take credit for inventing coronavirus were at the hub of this story. From 2003 to 2018, they controlled 100% of the cash flow that built the empire around the industrial complex of coronavirus.
The World Health Organization has officially named the novel coronavirus
the novel coronavirus outbreak.
The World Health Organization
is a pandemic, an international public health emergency.
While we know that the coronavirus manipulation started with Dr. Ralph Baric in 1999.
The major characteristics of SARS, MERS, and SARS coronavirus 2. It's a good way for you.
Ralph Baric is the researcher at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who's famous for his chimeric coronavirus research. In 2002, there was a recognition that the coronavirus was seen as an exploitable mechanism for both good and ill. On April the 25th, 2003, the U.S. Center for Disease Control filed a patent on the coronavirus transmitted to humans. Under 35 U.S. Code Section 101, nature is prohibited from being patented. Either SARS coronavirus was manufactured, therefore making a patent on it legal, or it was natural, therefore making a patent on it illegal. If it was manufactured, it was a violation of biological and chemical weapons, treaties, and laws. If it was natural, filing a patent on it was illegal. In either outcome, both are illegal. In the spring of 2007, the CDC filed a petition with the Patent Office to keep their application confidential and private. They actually filed patents on not only the virus, but they also filed patents on its detection and a kit to measure it. Because of that CDC patent, they had the ability to control who was authorized and who was not authorized to make independent inquiries into coronavirus. You cannot look at the virus, you cannot measure it, you cannot develop a test kit for it. And by ultimately receiving the patents that constrained anyone from using it, they had the means, they had the motive, and most of all, they had the monetary gain from turning coronavirus from a pathogen to profit.
Developing and owning a coronavirus vaccine has become a biotech arms race with political overtones.
This vaccine gold rush is starting to bother me. Gold rush. Let's keep that in mind.
And so somewhere between 2012 and 2013, something happened. The federal funding for research that was feeding into places like Harvard Emory, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. That funding suddenly became impaired by something that happened at the NIH, where the NIH got this little tiny moment of clarity and said, I think something we're doing is wrong. And in 2013, the NIH said, gain-of-function research on coronavirus should be suspended. The National Institutes of Health had a moral and social and potentially legal reason to object to research. But the letters that were sent to the researchers essentially said, you are receiving notice that we're telling you to stop. And now on the bottom of the page, we're going to clarify what stop means. Keep going. But when the heat gets hot in 2014 and 15, what do? You offshore the research. You fund the Wuhan Institute of Virology to do the stuff that sounds like it's getting a little edgy with respect to its morality and legality. But do you do it straight way? No. You run the money through a series of cover organizations to make it look like you're funding a U.S. operation, which then subcontracts with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The U.S. could say, China did it. China could say, the U.S. did it. And the cool thing is, both of them are almost telling the truth.
The Vatican has opened an international conference to discuss the role of the mind, body, and soul in the future of healthcare. The 3-day virtual event explores methods of prevention and preparedness against health crises. It features conversations from leaders in the humanities and scientific communities, such as Dr. Anthony Fauci, the chief medical advisor to U.S. President Joe Biden.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Guys like Fauci get up there and start talking, he doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine. He should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on at the bottom. Those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people who pay his salary and lie directly into the camera. You can't expect the sheep to really respect the best and the brightest. They don't know the difference, really. I like humans, don't get me wrong, but basically the vast majority of them do not possess the ability to judge who is and who isn't a really good scientist. That's a problem. That's a main problem actually with science, I'd say, in this century, because science is being judged by people. Funding is being done by people who don't understand it. Okay, who do we trust? Fauci. Fauci doesn't know enough to, If Fauci wants to get on television with somebody who knows a little bit about this stuff and debate him, he could easily do it because he's been asked. I've had a lot of people. PCR is separate from that. It's just a process that's used to make a whole lot of something out of something. That's what it is. It's not. It doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that. That's why it's not.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
All that is needed for evil to thrive is for good men and women to do nothing. Everything starts with education, because knowledge is power. And we need a national and international community united and empowered by the knowledge of our true history and how we have come to the problems of today and where it will all lead if we do not wake up and come together in educated unity.
Your laws are not my law. Your laws are not my law. Your laws are not my law. Hear screams from the battle scenes, conceive and dream a new rage. Select a side that coincides. Different talk to the ones outside. Give up the guilt for what you did. It's only wrong if you sing this song. The rules they make is their only stake to protect the money that they make.